Hey, Scott Johnston here. I have a kind of convicting question that I want us to ask ourselves. Are we making the most of every opportunity to share our faith? Before you answer that, I want to read to you from 1 Corinthians 9:21-23. See, Paul's writing to the Corinthian church, and he says this: "To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings." You know, when Paul writes about this, if I'm honest with you, my first gut response is, man, that's so inspiring, but also that's so intimidating. In fact, a couple months ago, my wife and we had recently started this small group, and it's been an incredible experience. And as we've started the small group, I went outside one time, and all of these cars are parked in front of our house. And one of my neighbors comes up who I know doesn't go to church. And they came up and they say, "Hey, you know, what's going on?" And all this. And I'm like, "Oh, we've got some friends over. It's a great time, you know, all this kind of stuff." And he goes, "Oh, is it like a Bible study?" And you know, you thinking what I'm thinking, right? Like, that's a perfect opportunity to share the gospel. That's a perfect opportunity to be like, yeah, in fact, you should come to our church, all this stuff. You know what I responded with? And then I went back inside. That's like striking out in t-ball, okay? That's like striking out in slow pitch softball. It's not supposed to happen. It doesn't look good on a pastor's resume. I know, my dad says that all the time, right? Can I be honest with you? That happens sometimes, and it makes me go, man, what was I afraid of, or why did I not make that connection? You know, I think there's some roadblocks to sharing our faith sometimes. I think one of the big roadblocks is simply, you know, how do you share your faith? How are we called to share our faith without embarrassing God? And if I could just give you some practical things that have helped me, for example, you know, how do we do that? Well, we go and make disciples, right? That was the Great Commission from Jesus. That word "go" is not a, hey, you need to go somewhere. It's an as you go. As you go, it's contextual, that you know, in your daily life, when you go to work, when you lie down at night, that, you know, with your kids, you're making disciples. But not only that, but like, how do we do that? Yes. Well, you know, we are witnesses. In Acts, it talks about, at the beginning of the book of Acts, Jesus says, "You will be my witnesses," not my defense attorneys, you know, not my prosecutors. You're actually going to be my witnesses, that we just legitimately share who God is and what he's done. But then how do we do this? Well, in 1 Peter 3:15, it says, "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." That we actually, when we share our faith, we do this with a tone of gentleness and respect. That we actually may ask the question, hey, can I share what God is doing in my life with you? And if the answer is no, that's totally fine. You can say, hey, that's totally fine. Can I ask why? You know, and that actually produces a conversation. My hope for us is this: that we as Christians, that we would take the example that Paul sets for us, that we would become like the weak to win the weak, that we would become like the strong to win the strong, that we would push aside all of the obstacles and barriers from somebody hearing the gospel. You know, the best way that you can do that is by sharing your life with them, by testifying to what God has done in you and through you, and what he's currently doing through your life. I hope this encourages you today.